Thank you all. Well, let me just, I want to kick it off by thanking Dr. Reka and Dr. Vakarataj for making, for making the time tonight, and especially for your leadership and guidance during these truly unprecedented times. As parents, we've got a lot to deal with, with kids home, the distance learning, and a whole new normal. And your regular updates, Joe, have been a great helping ease the anxiety for everybody. So first off, thank you very much.
No,
and for all the parents, thank you so much for making the time tonight. Particularly given everything that's going on, I think the budget, and I don't want to spoil anything for Dr. Reka and Vakarataj, but this is probably one of the most important votes that we have to consider, if and when it happens. Cuomo's, could have some budget cuts that could impact programs. So I'm gonna let Joe and Ann speak more to that, but we want to thank you all for participating, and we'll be in touch shortly after to talk about how we can show support as a PTA for this proposed budget. So that said, Dr. Reka, you want to take it away?
Sure, and thank you, James. And it's it's our pleasure to do everything that we can. I just want to take a moment to thank everybody that's on here. It's great to see so many people. It has been a real challenging time, and there are no illusions about that. We're keeping an optimistic view on everything that we're doing in the district, and we recognize that the most important thing that we can do as teachers and community members is just be there and be as supportive as possible. There are no perfect answers in this situation, as we all know, and unfortunately, in a lot of cases, there aren't even any answers, immediately, which makes things even more challenging, particularly for our children. So with that, just please know that on behalf of the Board of Education and certainly myself and our team, we are appreciative of everything you're all doing, your patience, your flexibility, and, I'll tell you, your love for your kids, for other people's kids, and for our community and our school district. It shines through every day. I can tell you, unfortunately, that's not the case everywhere. We in White Plains are really, I believe, approaching this in the best way that we can, and that's together. So again, just thanks for everything, and know that we're grateful and you're appreciated. Now tonight, I am going to give you an update on our proposed budget with a giant caveat. Again, living in the world of uncertainty and ambiguity, I'm going to start off by letting you know that we are in a situation right now, as you know, where the state is in fiscal trouble. The state needs intervention from the federal level in order to support its programs and its social programs and also all of the things that we know we need in our communities to keep moving forward. And that includes police and fire, it includes healthcare, it includes roads and transportation, and of course, it includes the bedrock of every single community in our state, their school systems. Right now, the governor has indicated that if federal support does not come, that cuts to state aid could be as high as initially 50%. Yesterday came down, 2 days ago, it came down to 20%. The 20% reduction in state aid is about $6 million in White Plains. That's real money. $1 is real money, but 6 million of them is a real challenge for a school district moving forward. So as we're thinking about our budget and our proposed budget, we recognize that dependent upon what happens in this first window where the governor could further reduce state aid, and that ends on April 30th, we may be coming back to the Board of Education with adjustments to the proposed budget. So just bear that in mind, and you're going to see in the presentation in a moment that there are areas that are on hold or we're sort of paused on right now until we know more about what the state aid piece is going to look like. We know that we're going to have to make some changes. We know that that's going to happen. What we're endeavoring to do right now is to preserve our existing program. So, people are talking about all kinds of things, or what's going to get cut, what's going to get cut, what's going to get cut. Well, no, No, we're not talking about what's going to get cut right now. What we're talking about is what can we do to make sure that we can keep our program, the one that we're in right now, intact, so that our children continue to enjoy and benefit from the existing structure. Of course, everything in every component within our proposed budget is all predicated on the vision, mission, and core beliefs of the school district, and of course our strategic plan. Those of you who saw the initial budget presentation can already know that all of the recommendations within the proposed budget all kind of come back to our strategic priorities and strategies, making sure that we have an exceptional curriculum that meets the needs of each and every one of our learners, so there's access for all of our kids, that we have social and emotional resources available and continue to build upon an already strong social and emotional platform within the district, and of course engage our families, nurture those relationships, and support our families in every way that we can. We use a planning technique in our district, as you know, in terms of long range and thinking about the future. So not just this year, but also 3, 5, 10 years down the road. And why? Why? Pandemics. Not to be flippant, but this is exactly that type of a scenario that you don't know what's going to happen. So you want to make sure that you're trying to keep in mind and keep count of all the potential volatilities that could impact your fiscal plan. A lot of work has gone into the proposed budget, and I always start these presentations with thanking everybody who's been part of that work from the very beginning, when we start talking about what the community looks or hopes to be able to see in the proposed spending plan, all the way through to the Board of Education review and adoption. So many stakeholders take a part in this process. I have to thank, of course, Ann Vaccaro-Teisch. Thank you, Dr. Teisch, as well as Dr. Hand, Ms. Algart, and Scott Pepper, and all of the administrators and stakeholders who participate in this process. It's not done in a vacuum, and it's not done alone. And it's also again, building upon a plan that already exists, right, in our long-range plan. So thank you for everybody for all that hard work. We also believe in continuous improvement in the district, so we're always trying to look for ways that we can improve not just our program, but also our facilities and our operations. So we have reviews, I should say we have reviews on pause right now, but in progress this year, of course, in dual language and social studies and writing. We're also working with CASEL to review our social and emotional program, and working with a university to help with climate and culture, initially at 2 of our schools, at Post Road and Rochambeau. Next steps will be elementary guidance, as you've heard about, physical education and community communications, as well as science. Now, again, we anticipate that we'll be able to continue in terms of our cycle of review, evaluation, and improvement, but some of those things might be put on pause in terms of implementation, dependent upon the fiscal reality that we find ourselves in. So just in summary, the proposed budget, which is within the tax cap, I'm trying to move your faces a little bit here. Let me see if I can do that better. No, that was worse. Maybe that's better. It's within the tax cap, and you can see the change in terms of the appropriations, 2.94%. And again, we are very, very careful to make sure that we stay within the tax cap. That's very important to the Board of Education, very important to us. We recognize the need to be able to do that, and we're very proud to be able to say that this budget does just that. The major sources of revenues, as you all are very well aware, is property taxes, which are too high, and that's why we work to try and keep that as low as possible, while also lobbying for more state aid, more of your dollars coming back to support your children. Of course, this year is a real challenge. It started out as a challenge, and then with the onset of the pandemic, the challenges remain. So we're going to continue to keep lobbying, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Now turning our focus on the federal government to make sure that the federal government understands that, hey, New York needs more of its money back right now. We know that New York puts far more dollars into the federal government than it receives, and now we need it. So we're gonna be working to make sure that our voices are heard loud and clear, not just to support our schools, but also to support the critical public infrastructure all throughout the state. You all know that the tax cap is not a 2% tax cap. You've been hearing this for years, and we put the slide in so that you can see the cumulative loss that occurred way back, even before 2012-13. We're up to about 6.6 million, and if state aid is further reduced, those numbers will increase again. Just another look at the basic formula of the tax levy limit. Again, all this information, by the way, is on the website. It's been there for you. Okay, so in 2021, we are building this proposed budget off of the enacted state budget. We're building it off of what the governor told us it was going to be. Foundation aid has been frozen. It has not been yet reduced. But the state projects a $15 billion deficit, which the governor has been talking about every day, and I've been referring to this evening. And if the governor projects or comes through with the projection of a 20% reduction, that's $6 million in terms of lost state aid. The pandemic adjustment, which you may have heard from, reduces state aid for districts. Basically, the state took the pandemic money that was coming from the federal government that was allocated to the White Plains City School District, and then just swapped it out, put the 1.6 million in, and then took out 1.6 million in state support. These were the executive budget areas of concern. Almost all of them were rejected, except what you'll see in yellow. The governor's executive budget looked to increase state aid a bit. Basically, it's been held flat. And then way down at the bottom, the Committee on Special Education Placements, the district is now responsible for 18.42%, the state share in terms of what was paid for these residential placements. When we look at our budget, in terms of the areas of expense, you'll notice that the expenses are where you would expect them to be. They're in program, they're in our teachers, and they're in our support folks, the folks who are working with our children. Almost 80% of our budget is dedicated to program, and that's where you want to be. That's where it should be. In terms of some factors within the proposed budget, we were recommending to pay off an energy performance capital lease of about $5.3 million. That's on hold for the time being until we see where we are with regard to state aid. We may have to shift that. We may have to not do that in order to stem any potential cut from the state and support our school district. We are looking to reduce debt service and the tax levy. Again, we have to look very carefully at this. The district is self-funded in terms of our tax certiorari refunds, about $5 million a year the district pays out, and so we continue to have a reserve on hand to be able to support those expenditures. Employee benefits, right now we are seeing a bit of an increase, and we know that in the future years we're going to see a big increase. So while we, for instance, in health insurance are at 3%, which is far lower than what our competitors are at, we know that in the future, these areas, both TRS, ERS, and health insurance are likely to increase. We're going to continue to support one-time only expenses to avoid impacts on future budgets. We're also looking to make sure that the costs associated with personnel always are in line with the collective bargaining agreements. And we have some contractual increases that are about 2 to 4%, depending upon the areas. And that's BOCES, that's utilities, insurance, and transportation. Just to give you a sense of our enrollment projections, but you're all fairly aware of this. We're pretty much flat right now. The projections in kind of going down the line, even back to 2029, 2030. While it looks a lot lower, you're still at about 7,000 kids. You're still at about 6,940. And we've been pretty much, our demographer has been pretty much on point each year in terms of our projections. Now, the majority of what we had been recommending within the budget are staffing recommendations, and they're in line with the long-range plan. But please note in red at the top that right now, much of this is on hold. The only positions that are not on hold are those that are mandated by programs. So, for instance, We have integrated co-teach teacher at Ridgeway, which we need per mandate, and as well as the MAS reclassification of the 0.8 to a 1.0 or a full-time teacher at MAS. So everything else right now is on hold. Again, barring any changes with state aid. The cost neutral positions, obviously the ones that have no budgetary impact but are still listed here, can move forward. Other recommendations as well, we're holding steady right now. The board and the administration are very, very keen on introducing more opportunities for occupational education and career and technical education for our students at the high school. We wanted to increase the number of slots available by 20, which also requires a bus. Summer school as well. We have some programming that we would like to put into place, social emotional learning and the mentoring program for trauma-informed schoolwork at Highlands in athletics. We want to increase speed training. We want to increase strength training, SAT preparation, which is also open to all students, as well as increasing modified sports offerings at Highlands for volleyball and basketball. In BOCES, we were looking to expand services, automated voter registration, communication services for our community, expanding our voice over IP and security system subscriptions, as well as some other reporting supports and mandated lead testing, of course. We were looking and are looking, hopefully, to be able to put into place a community liaison that will help shepherd programs like our basics program, our social emotional outreach program in community schools, food pantries, book pantries, clinical care, all of those types of things, help shepherd those forward within the district. But again, we have to wait and see what state aid looks like in order to do this. Cybersecurity insurance and also an alignment of resources to make sure that our per pupil expenditures in the building are in line with ESSA. In terms of our capital long range plan, we are obviously master planning. I'll start from the bottom. Master planning is on hold right now. The master planning committee did a great job, and I'm so thankful to them, and I feel terrible that we're in this position right now, but we have to be on pause with regard to master planning until we have a better sense of where our economic footing will be in the next 18 months, 2 years to come. Energy management, we do have we are in line to be able to participate in an energy management program, which should yield a very good savings for the district, up to about $540,000, a little more in the first year. In terms of capital reserve, we want to continue to support the district's master plan and utilize capital reserve again this year at $10 million, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Again, we're using the one-time funds, and our operating budget also contains minor projects to the tune of about $3 million. Capital projects that are proposed for using capital reserve dollars, new heating and ventilation at Highlands, renovating the restrooms at GW, their original restrooms from 1927. At MAS, MAS is the last school we need to finish up our PA address system and clock system at MAS. Rochambeau, again, water, domestic lines and hot water lines and restrooms from 1931. They need to get refurbished. They definitely did their time. Also installing new corridor ceilings and LED lights at Rochambeau, which will be wonderful for the building. Those of you who've been in Rochambeau know that it's a very big building, it's very ornate and beautiful building, but ceilings are very high, and so the lighting in the hallways is somewhat dim. This will be nice, and we'll be able to brighten up those hallways quite a bit. When we look at the budget, we want to look at it in three parts. We want to see where the expenditures are, and they're in here depicted. You can look at last year's, or this year's rather, compared to the proposed for next year, and we're in great shape. Again, almost 80% of the proposed budget is dedicated to program, and that's exactly where you want to be. And the Board of Education of the White Plains City School District has been in this form and fashion for quite some time, and we're happy to see that we're still there and we're still holding strong there. I don't ever like talking about this, but the reality right now is probably there's a greater need to talk about a contingency budget and what it means if a budget fails. Right now, we know that the economic situation everywhere nationwide is very, very challenging. School budgets are the only budget that the taxpayer is able to vote on. The only one. You don't get to vote on municipal budgets. We don't get to vote on state budgets. We don't get to vote on federal budgets. So the reality is, when a vote comes to people in a time of economic distress, many times school budgets suffer because that's the only way people, property owners, can stem an increase in their taxes if they're under fiscal duress. We understand that. When a budget does fail, there is potentially another chance to modify the budget and to go back out. But if it fails a second time, it goes to a zero tax levy increase. So it's an austerity budget, and there can be no increase whatsoever. That means that's another $5 million out of the budget. So imagine a worst case scenario. And again, this is not doom and gloom. I think it's important for us to be honest with each other. A worst case scenario where you're losing, $6 million in state aid, then you have to further reduce your budget. I mean, that is catastrophic for an educational program, White Plains or otherwise. That would be catastrophic. So it is really important, as James mentioned earlier, to recognize how important it is for folks, moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, folks involved in the school district, how important it is for them to be cognizant of the budget always, but certainly this year, and to also work very hard, hopefully, to lobby to make sure that the federal government does what it's responsible to do, which is to ensure that states are solvent and to make sure that states get through emergent situations. In terms of the budget, the questions rather, you're going to see the first question on the ballot would be to approve the proposed budget, again within the tax cap. Capital Reserve Fund will be the second question. And remember, this is the savings account, if you will. This is the savings account that's been created by voter approval so that the district can put money aside when it has it to be able to attend to capital expenses, which then means the district doesn't necessarily have to bond to take care of things like its fields, its schools, its parking lots, all those, et cetera. And it can only be expended by voter approval. So again, this year, we would be asking for voter permission to expend from our capital reserve in the amount of $10 million. And again, there's no tax increase associated with that use of the money. Money's there. It's there for capital projects, and we're simply asking for permission to utilize it to take care of those projects that I mentioned before. We estimate that we're saving over $2 million, about $2.3 million in interest and bond issuance costs just by having a capital reserve. So again, it's a great thing to have. It helps, it saves tax dollars, and it helps us make sure we're maintaining our buildings and our facilities to the level that the people deserve them to be. And that's the proposition for the capital reserve. And questions? I think I saw something in a chat here. Okay, so the question, and I was going to talk a little bit about this too. The question, it's a great one. How will we be voting this year? And the answer to that question right now is we don't know. We do know that the elections have been pushed from May potentially into June. We do not know if there is going to be a change in the way elections take place. We certainly know that there are challenges associated with trying to get folks to come out and vote right now for a variety of reasons. You know, people, obviously we have the big reason, right? We're supposed to stay home. But even if there was a relaxation of, let's say, physical distancing or the pause, a stay-at-home order, voters are going to be reticent. Many voters are going to be reticent to venture out and stand in line, to go into polls, to do all those things. And on top of it, we vote in our schools. So, that's an added wrinkle in terms of folks, wanting to get out there. And we understand that. We've been communicating that with the executive. There's also a challenge associated with the primary that's going to be coming up in the state, and voting machines and the use of voting machines. After about the first 2 weeks in June, those voting machines are unavailable until after the elections. There is then the question of absentee ballots, which some folks have been floating as a potential possibility. I can tell you that that's a very difficult situation for school districts to accomplish, simply because that's not generally the way that elections are handled, and a massive influx in absentee ballots could also be really challenging for school districts. And I mean, school districts everywhere, not just necessarily White Plains. There's also the added challenge that many of the folks who work in elections are right at that spot of the age and unfortunately sometimes of underlying health issues, where they are the most vulnerable members of our community, and they would be essentially in the most vulnerable position in terms of dealing with the public, in terms of opening up absentee ballots and all of the like. So it is a bit of a conundrum right now. We do anticipate that we're going to be getting additional information from the executive in the coming weeks. We already know that there had been some changes in the last executive order pursuant to county taxes, and changing a bit of the collection procedures, which could perhaps telegraph that there's going to be a change in the way that they're going to approach school budget elections as well. So the long-winded answer to your question is we have to wait and see a bit, but there's a lot to consider, which of course I'm sure you were already thinking about. Mr. Craver writes, we know what funding we're getting from the state before we vote. Will we know what funding? Yes. Yes, absolutely, Mr. Craver. We will know how much or how little we'll be receiving of your tax dollars back from the state before we vote. If anything changes, we're going to need to amend the proposed budget. The Board of Education will have to amend it and reaffirm it. We'll share that again, of course, with all of you, with the community. We have to wait until the 30th to see what the governor will do in terms of state aid. It's a great question. If not, so no, you will know. The question was, can we vote outside of schools and parking lots? I don't know. That's a question that would have to be approved by the Board of Elections, and that's a possibility. It sure could be a possibility. As long as there's not inclement weather. We did see, that there was inclement weather. There's also a question of security for polls, and that's really something that would have to be ironed out by the Board of Elections, but definitely a great idea. Question from Salvatore. About 3 years ago, there was a mention in the budget for a new drainage system at Post Road Schools. It's there. It got finished. It should be working pretty well now. I remember I went by during a rainstorm a couple of months ago, and I was impressed that there wasn't a lake back there. From Jamie, is there a list of priorities if state aid reduced and eliminated, as in what would go first? Right. Thanks, Jamie, for asking that question. That's always top of mind for many people. It might surprise you to hear that the answer is no. And it's not no because we're not planning. It's no because before we start looking at cutting programming, we're going to look at other areas to be able to reduce expenditures that you wouldn't feel or you wouldn't see necessarily. So our goal is to preserve all of our children's programming. So some folks might come out and they would say, yeah, well, the first thing we're going to do is get rid of modified sports. No, that's not the position that we're taking. What we're doing is we're looking at our complete budget. We're looking at all of our expenditure, our proposed expenditures, and we would try to walk those back to the tune of whatever we're shy in state aid before we would start actually cutting programming. But in the worst case scenario, if we started to cut programming, and unfortunately I have lived through this before, and some of you have as well, what you do is you look at the areas within the program that have the least impact on our children's ability to progress forward academically. Again, we're not there, so I don't want anyone to worry about that right now. But we definitely, if we needed to do those types of things, we would absolutely be communicating with you. And let's just all hope together and think positively that that's not a bridge that we're going to have to cross this year. All right, James, any other? I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to answer questions where we can actually talk too. I miss talking to people.
Does anybody have any questions they want to raise in person outside of chat?
Question I have was, has the district been able to save any money during this time period? Meaning, with the school buildings closed, obviously, not saving in staff or anything, but certain things like transportation. I've heard maybe some districts have been able to save transportation costs because clearly we don't need buses right now. Has that been stuff we've been able to save on and potentially be able to use to help any forestall any issues later? Yeah,
you bet. There are areas that we're saving. The challenge is, what can we carry over? Because remember, there are state regulations that limit us to our ability to carry over funds from year to year. But we are also lobbying the state to relax those, to allow us to carry more funds, all the funds that we can. to help support, programming into the next years. But yeah, we absolutely are, Michael.
Savings in utilities, and we
Yep.
have savings for the fuel for the buses. And we're going through now, we're updating all our projections to understand exactly what that will look like as we do our fund balance update, our fund balance projections update to the Board of Education.
Yeah. You should know, though, those school districts, Mike, I think I heard you say about transportation. You should know and you should be proud of the White Plains City School District has continued to fulfill its obligations to our transportation company, our drivers. Those folks are covered under the federal act. To their credit, National Express did not lay their people off. So out of the 22 million people in the unemployment rolls, to their credit, National Express has retained their employees, which is good because those companies who laid off all of their folks, not only is that an economic stress everywhere else, but it also, when time comes to remobilize, it's going to be very, very difficult for them. And we've heard from some school districts that their bus companies are actually declining to renew with them, and are going to go back out because they know that the school districts will then have to put out an RFP, and they'll be able to come in higher because they know right now the market is such that they have the leverage. So we're really happy that while we're saving money, in transportation in some ways, but at the same time, that company's been taking care of its people. And when we do come out of this, and we will, they're going to be ready to go. We're also going to be using them for other things, and we do have them on standby as well. You probably saw we're going to start book buses when the weather gets a little bit nicer down the road. So we will be using them, but we are saving in other ways like sports trips and stuff like that. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm missing questions on the side. Okay. All right. Thanks, Mrs. Jessica Buck says the PTA's writing letters to senators, Congress. That's fantastic. It's exactly what we need to do. On the district website, we have ways for everyone to get in contact with our senators and our congresswoman, and you can share that information as well. How are children receiving? How are the children receiving meals? Are they signed up for them? Oh, thanks so much, Wayne. No, any one of our children in White Plains can come and get meals. They don't need to sign up. We are feeding our kids. We are taking a list for volunteers. Fortunately, we haven't had to mobilize volunteers yet, but certainly, Wendy, if you're interested in getting on the list, we'd be happy to have you. We have been able to fulfill the distribution daily. I think we're probably approaching about 14,000 meals now distributed, plus meals that have been going to homes via our community partners. So thanks so much for your willingness to contribute as well. Is there any concern with property tax income reductions? I'm not sure I understand that question. Oh, maybe related to the pilots. Maybe that's what it is. Not pilots. I'm sorry. State and local tax deduction, SALT. Yeah, there's definitely a concern, and that's been a concern since it's been on the books, because basically it's a law that simply punishes states like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and again, not helping our property taxpayers. So we have been lobbying to get SALT repealed immediately. And I believe that there is some discussion right now in Congress about that. I don't know where it is. And by the way, Ro, if I didn't get that right, let me know and I'll answer. Happy to answer. A question from Ruben: under the current circumstances, neighbors are losing their jobs. Is there any coordination with the County of Westchester to avoid raising the school tax, taxes portion from the taxes we paid, and getting it in some input from the county? Thanks, Ruben, for your question. What we're trying to do is keep tax increases to as low as possible, staying within the tax cap. That's definitely our goal. In terms of working with the county, we're working with the county to try and partner in any way we can. And that partnership helps, shared services helps to alleviate any types of increases. We do that with the city also. So hopefully that's a help. We have to clarify. Oh, okay, Ro, to clarify, is there a concern with property tax reductions? Yes. Oh, sure. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. So the question is there a concern with property tax reductions since folks in White Plains may be unemployed? Absolutely. And that was what I was alluding to earlier. And I'm sorry if I wasn't clear about that. There's a big concern. I mean, we know that folks everywhere are struggling. I mean, I can tell you right, in my own family, my father is a truck driver, and 2 weeks ago his business went out. So it's everywhere, and we're absolutely concerned about it, and we're trying to do everything we can to be supportive. Question is, Kate. Thanks, Kate. How will the district be working to get the word out about the vote, the date, and both the date and the need? Yeah. So same way we always do. Plus. So we'll be sharing all of that information as often as we possibly can. As soon as we find out how the voting is going to happen, it will be everywhere, broadcast everywhere, as we always do. And we'll keep making sure we're going to be doing our mailings, and we'll be doing all of those traditional things. But at the same time, spreading the word virtually, spreading it digitally, and hopefully with your help, spreading it far and wide, particularly the importance of this year. Every year is important, but this year is critically important. To Ruben's point, we know that folks are struggling, but we also know that you've invested a great deal into this amazing school district, and your kids benefit as they should from that investment. And the last thing any of us wants to do is preside over a dismantling of our children's educational program. This White Plains is an amazing place, and we have amazing opportunities for our kids. And what we're doing right now is everything we possibly can to protect and preserve all of that. So you spreading that word will be huge as well, Kate. Thank you. I think Jones asked me, do I see this only impacting this year, maybe? Yeah, no. I see this impacting us for years to come. And the planning that we're putting into place right now is not just about this coming fiscal year. We're also looking, Nan and I were talking about this morning, we're looking another 2, 3, 4 years down the road, because we do believe, first of all, let's talk about the fact that this is not, the COVID-19 is not going away, right? It's going to be with us, it's going to live with us a while until we can figure out a vaccine, or herd immunity. And then, it's going to be something that we're going to be contending with, the costs associated with dealing with this for years. So we will be making sure that that's all part of our calculus moving forward. Thanks, Laura. Thank you for getting meals out as well. Are students getting their meals daily, or can they get them all in one day? Students are getting their meals daily. Have you given meals to adults? If so, does it cost the district extra money? No, we're not giving meals to adults. They're going to our kids, and the adults are being encouraged to use the food pantry, of which you're an amazing supporter. The food pantries that are available.
Can I follow up with that?
Sure.
A lot of parents have shared that it's difficult to make 5 trips. Have we thought about trying to, just not do that as often? Because a lot of families are coming in taxis, or they're actually sharing cars.
Yeah. I would say, if there are particular parents who are, if you come in contact with parents who are having those challenges, definitely get them to reach out to their principals, or and we can try and help and try and figure that out. The same goes for if somebody can't get to a food distribution site, let us know and we'll try and help also. Even if that means trying to figure out a way to get another site closer to them or get food to them, but we'll definitely figure that out. The challenge with giving 5 meals out in one day, and I know you're not suggesting that, is that the logistics of that would be really difficult. I think it would be actually easier to try and attend to each of those folks individually if possible, even if we had to stagger it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Do you think that it's possible that a vote, this is from Mike, do you think that it's possible that a vote could come the same day as the primary? I'm aware that state PTA may be advocating for a June 9th vote. I'm honestly, I'm not sure. I don't know that mixing school elections with political elections is really an appetizing prospect for the governor. I think that might be a challenge. I'm just not sure though. And I did hear about the June 9th. Date, but June 9th is coming quick. And so if that's going to be the case, we need to know, because we have noticing to do, we have ballots to order. All of those things need to happen and soon. Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? I know that this is really hard. I know it's hard on you. I know it's hard on your families. It truly is one of those things that we're going to look back on and say, wow, do you remember? But we're doing it. We're getting through it, and we're getting through it together. This budget is a strong budget. It may need to be modified. If it needs to be modified, we'll do it. We're going to do whatever we need to do to protect our kids, to protect our community, and to protect the school experience that our children deserve. So, thank you for everything you've been doing. Again, to the board, to my team, thank you. And we'll keep you posted. April 30th is coming. I'm not quite sure when, because every day is just one long day, right? But, next week we'll know, and I hope, and then we'll be able to get back to you and tell you where we're at. And keep your fingers crossed, but more than keep your fingers crossed, call every day. The letters are great, but telephone calls to senators' offices and telephone calls to Congresswoman Nita Lowey's office, those are the calls are the thing that really moves the needle in many instances. There's a script, a very basic script that you could choose to use. It's like 4 or 5 lines, but these folks have to be hearing from us. They have to know how important it is for the federal government to step up at this time. And I'm not a big government guy, but this is a natural disaster. This is no different than if we had a tornado. This is no different than if we had a hurricane. In some ways, it might even be worse. It's just that when you look out your window and survey the damage, you don't see it, because the damage is in the hospitals. The damage is in the bank accounts. It's in the shuttered businesses. It's in the lost revenues. It's in the kids crying at the kitchen table because they're tired of looking at computer screens. So the reality is we have to get that message across to the federal government so that they act. And I don't even want them to print new money. I just want them to send New York's money back. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Ricca. We really appreciate your
pleasure.
time. And thank you all, everyone, for attending. Somebody just put a reminder in the chat that at 7 o'clock we got to get outside and salute our first responders. So we're going to drop off, give people time for that. But everyone, we will be in touch through the PTA just to provide ways and how we can support the budget. We'll keep you posted on any changes that happen next week. We're also going to make available templates that Dr. Ricca described about how we can reach out to our local governments. We spoke with Senator Shelley Meyer this past week. She's fighting the fight for us. So we got to help out and make sure that next year when we get back to the new normal, we're in a good position. So anyway, thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Ricca. Thank you, and Karataish. Ron Velez, thanks for setting this up, and the support staff. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, James. Can I just 2 more quick things? I never like to give the microphone up. I just want to let you know I got invited, and I'm very honored. I got invited to jump into White Plains Hospital emergency department's Zoom happy hour tomorrow night, and I'm going to deliver a huge thanks on behalf of all of us to them. So I will do that. The other thing that we've been asking is that parents email Liza, email me pictures of the kids smiling, working, so that we can share all that good news, get that out there, please. Encourage folks to do that. We're going to be having guest readers coming on to do some guest reading spots in the coming weeks on Facebook. So a lot of little cool things for the kids. And if you think of something, please reach out to us and let us know. If you see something that some other school district, some other place is doing, share it with us, because we're in the process right now of planning for capstone activities. And I'll tell you, my mandate to our team has been, whatever we do, I want it to be first class and the best anyone's ever seen it. So we're trying to figure out, we just want so much for our kids. So anything you see, any ideas you have, send them along. And thank you again for everything. Thanks, James.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night.
You.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.